Hi, welcome to Zgadgetreview. Today we're going to be talking about the Zune, this little MP3 player by Microsoft that had a short lifespan, that had a lot of promise. Just think there were a lot of mistakes made along the way. But how we got to the Zune starts with Napster, all the way back in 1999. Quick thing about Napster, if you don't know what Napster was a peer-to-peer music sharing service, which meant that you could give Napster access to your music folder, which then will go and pull it to the software, and other people who were looking for specific songs or artists could go and pull the music from your folders in your computer and download them to their own computer. So this made a massive thing where people were taking music from each other without paying any money. Of course, the music industry went after Napster. Napster eventually went out of business in 2002. And then we have Steve Jobs and iTunes. iTunes had been around for a couple of years before it became the iTunes where you could go and buy music. Of course, Steve Jobs noticed how much people wanted to download music. And of course, the music industry had been dragged violently by Napster into the digital age, and they had no infrastructure or plans on how to satisfy what people were looking for. And that's where Steve Jobs, paraphrasing, said, hey, I can make it so people download music and we'll charge them money for this music and you'll make some money. And the music industry agreed. And that's how iTunes Marketplace got started in 2003. So we have iTunes taking over the space that Napster had left behind, but at the same time, being able to charge money for songs and for the music industry to get money for those songs. iTunes charged 99 cents per song, and it had a lot of different restrictions as well on what songs you could download, how you could listen to them and stuff. But that wasn't something that people were super bothered at the beginning. I mean, there were, of course, a section of people who were like, what the hell? So after years of Apple cornering the music market with iTunes and the iPod, Microsoft realized that there was an actual business and money to be made in this sector. And at the time, Microsoft was always playing catch up on everything that was happening around them. This is the dark years of Microsoft where they didn't seem to want to innovate or move forward. They were just stuck with Windows. And so they tried to catch up to Apple with their own marketplace/service. And this started with MSN Music. In 2004, Microsoft launched MSN Music, which was a music marketplace that quickly vanished and didn't go anywhere because, of course, competing with iTunes and the way iTunes will present the music and everything, it was something special at the time that just no one could really compete with. And so MSN Music shut down in 2006. In its place came Zune. The Zune was a MP3 player along with its own software and marketplace that you will use on your computer, a la iTunes. So Microsoft decided to do something very different than what Apple was doing at the time with the iPod. At the time, again, 2006, the iPod was a pretty sleek device. It was thin, was relatively small. It had a wheel that was tactile, so you could move the wheel around for volume. You can fast forward, rewind, and things like that. The iPod at the time was really a device to envy by other companies who were making devices. So the first mistake that Microsoft made was to partner with Toshiba and use technically what was a Toshiba Gigabit S, which was Toshiba's MP3 player, and make some tweaks to the device, which turned out to be this chunky thing here in 2006. Now, this sleek device came in 3 different colors. Came in brown, which wasn't a color that most people were looking for, black, and white. Microsoft got a lot of flack and jokes because of the size of the device and also the fact that for some reason they decided to come out with a brown color, which wasn't very appealing. At the time, you also gotta remember, or if you weren't alive at the time, that the market was very, very splintered, and it was pretty one-sided at the time because Apple was the only company with an iPod-like device. Apple was the only company with a music marketplace like iTunes. It was very hard for a lot of people who even weren't necessarily Apple consumers to begin with to have moved to the Apple ecosystem just to be able to consume music, because also we're talking, this is pre-iPhone. A lot of the people who became Apple consumers due to the iPod and iTunes ended up becoming iPhone consumers. So you had that going on in the market where there wasn't really any other choices when it was time to buy digital music. The only game in town was Apple. And so Microsoft wanted to take some of that market from them with the Zune. And this product, as you see here, if you think it looks clunky right now and chunky and old, it looked just like that at the time that it was released in comparison with what was on the market. I think the first mistake that Microsoft made was to not look for a device that was comparable to the iPod at the time. Because of that reason, the whole service felt a little rushed. Now, the Zune wasn't all horrible news. The Zune has some features that hasn't been seen on any other music service since. So one cool thing that you could do was you could share music with other people who had a Zune. So if you had a friend or family member who had a Zune, you could go to that social tab on your Zune and share a track with a person. Now, the person had some limits on what they could do with that track. They had 3 days to listen to the track. They could only play it up to 3 times, and they could then mark it for purchasing on the Zune marketplace. So it allowed you to share music with other people and show people music that probably they were not aware of, creating an extra way for an artist to get revenue of a song that probably wasn't super popular. And the other thing that the Zune did is they introduced what it was called the Zune Pass. Now, the Zune Pass gave you unlimited music for $15 a month. You can not only listen to unlimited songs for the $15 a month, you could also download the music into your Zune to listen anytime you wanted. Of course, you were required to sync the Zune with your computer and the Zune software every so often because all the songs were DRM. So if you stop paying for your membership or you stop syncing the Zune, then those songs that you had downloaded from the store wouldn't work for you. But you still could listen to technically up to 2 million tracks that were available in Zune Marketplace when it launched for only $15 a month. No one does that or has ever done that. Eventually, Zune Pass expanded to allow you to download up to 10 songs a month, DRM free, meaning that if you were paying $15 a month, you can download 10 songs and keep them for yourself. Of course, the songs weren't free because you were paying the $15 a month, but if you were to break down the price of each one of those songs, it's a little over $1 per song, making it pretty worthwhile if you had the subscription, and downloading the 10 songs every month, plus being able to listen to whatever songs you wanted to listen to. It was a pretty good deal. And again, one of the reasons I don't think that it took off, especially with something so appealing as the Zune Pass was because of how badly they botched the launch of this device. The fact that people were making jokes about the device and not giving Microsoft any sort of props for trying to launch a service, including the media, kind of spelled the end of the Zune before it ever got going. Now, the first Zune that launched was called the Zune 30, and that was because it had 30 gigabits hard drive storage in the device in order for you to be able to, of course, add music and videos. And the reason why this device Oh, and pictures. And the reason why this device was able to play videos is because the iPod at the time in 2006, which was known as the iPod Video, was able to play videos for the first time ever. And so the device specs are a 3-inch QVGA screen, again a 30 gigabit hard drive, built-in FM antenna, so you could listen to your FM radio on the go if you didn't want to download music for some reason, and of course wireless Zune to Zune music sharing or social connectivity as it was called. The first Zune released on November 14th, 2006 for $250. A year later, we got the Zune 2 or the Zune second generation, and this was a completely redesigned for the device, top to bottom, completely different than the previous one. And this was a device that could probably compete better with the iPod. And with this, we had 3 different variants. We had the Zune 80, which was comparable to the Zune 30. And as the Zune 80 tells you, it had 80 gigabytes of storage on board. Then we had 2 smaller Zunes, one with 4 gigs and one with 8 gigs. These were in order to compete with the iPod Nano. Now, the design, as I said, was a huge departure from the original. Here we had a sleek, thin device in a whole aluminum body. The device had a 3.2 LCD display measured diagonally, and that was in comparison to the 2.5-inch screen of the iPod Classic or iPod Video. The screen was all glass, which was very different than the plastic cover on this screen, giving you a nicer image if you were watching videos, for example. The device also had a different type of mechanism for navigation. It had a pad, what they call the Zoom pad, which was more like a laptop mouse pad. So you could move around with your finger and navigate the screen that way. People were actually praising the look of this new Zune, saying that it was a true competitor to the iPod, and in some camps that it looked better than the iPod Classic. Of course, this is around the same time that the iPod Touch also came out, so there was that small issue for Microsoft as well. The display resolution was 320 by 240, but you could actually download video up to 720p. I know, right? 720p was pretty cool at the time. This new second generation Zune added podcasts and the ability to sync your device through Wi-Fi. Before, you were forced to use a proprietary plug or connector that came with a device connected to your computer in order to sync your software with the player. But with the second gen, you were able to just do it wirelessly, which is something that should have been available on the original device. The Zune 80 retailed for $249, while the smaller versions retailed for $149 and $199 respectively. It also got very good press based on the look of the device and the performance of the device, something that of course they didn't have the first time around. That again, if they would have had the same thing that they had with the second gen device, the Zune will probably be something that would have lasted a lot longer than it did. And then finally in 2009, we had technically what was the third gen Zune and what will also become the last Zune, this being the Zune HD. And they moved into something completely different, and I will say in a way to compete with the iPod Touch. We had the Zune HD, which had a touch OLED screen. The Zune HD was available in 2 variants, the 16 gig and the 32 gig. The Zune HD had a 3.3-inch multi-touch OLED screen, which was a little smaller than the iPod Touch 3.5-inch screen. The resolution was 480 by 272, which was also a little lower than the iPod Touch 480 by 320. Of course, the device was a lot brighter and had nicer colors than the iPod Touch due to the fact that Microsoft decided to use an OLED screen for the device. So that was the story for the hardware. Then in 2011, Microsoft announced that they wouldn't be making any new hardware. technically the last piece of Zune hardware that came out was in 2010, and that was the Zune HD64, which stands for 64 gigs of storage. This announcement in 2011 also coincided with the fact that the smartphone market was growing, and you of course didn't need a separate MP3 player to listen to your music. If you had a smartphone, you could download your music, or if you had an iPhone, you could access iTunes and listen to music that way. So MP3 players were kind of going by the wayside, but the Zune never actually was able to capture enough of a market share to make it a worthwhile product for Microsoft. Eventually, the Zune branding completely went away, and it was announced, of course, that Microsoft was going to transition their services to their Windows Phone. So if you wanted to use Zune, you could do it on the Windows Phone. But just a year later, Microsoft decided to completely get rid of the Zune branding, changing music and video marketplace to Xbox Music and Xbox Video. And then Zune was no more, as it didn't even exist. And if you are a Zune owner, like I am, you can even download the software. Well, there is a workaround, which I'm actually going to show you in this video. If you have a Zune and you've been trying to get your music out of this thing, I'm going to show you how to do it with the software, at least to be able to have access to the stuff on the device and move them to your computer. The way I got the Zune software was through OneDrive. I found information on Microsoft's Answer forum. So there is a way you have to do it. You have to download both, but first you gotta run the package.exe. And then once you run that, you're going to get a window that's going to tell you that you need to download other files. And so once you do that, you click OK. It's going to take you to the Zune website, which is dead. And then you go here and run this one. Once you run this second one, and it should give you that window to install the Zune software in your computer. The Zune software works, has its limitations, and the reason is because it's not connected to the service anymore since it doesn't exist. But it should allow you to pull out things from the device that you otherwise might have not been able to, for example, pictures and videos. Also, you'll be able to transfer all the music from your device to your computer. It just won't let you play it if it's DRM music. Any music that you purchased or added via, ripping CDs or things like that, you will have access to. So keep that in mind. But still, at least gives you access to stuff that you otherwise probably wouldn't have access to. Another thing that I wasn't able to test was my Zune account. I don't remember what my Zune account information was, so I wasn't able to log in. I tried logging in with my Microsoft account and it didn't work. I tried creating a new account and it didn't work. And so that's the limitations that I found with the software. But at least this way, you still have access to the stuff that were on the device, and you're able to, in a way, recuperate them and transfer them to any other storage that you might want to. So as you can see, the Zune wasn't a horrible device. It wasn't a horrible software experience. It was a pretty good thing overall. But I think the biggest issue was at the time that it came out, iPod was the strongest thing around, and people didn't want to have to go and try something new necessarily, especially because at the time, MP3 players, a lot of MP3 players require their own software, were very cumbersome to use, convert formats to put into the MP3 and all that, which Apple came and completely made seamless and simple. And I don't think that people wanted to get out of that ecosystem to go try something else. That was problem number one. Problem number two was the fact that people have made so much fun of the brand that whether we like it or not, those things a lot of times influence what people are going to buy or what people are going to use. And that was the other issue. People made so much fun about the Zune. People made so much bad press about the Zune that in a way affected it in a way that it could never recover, no matter how much effort they put into their devices and the software. And the fact that they weren't conscious enough to make a launch of a device that could compete better with the iPod instead of coming out with something like this was obviously a huge mistake. While the Zune was a good effort by Microsoft, I think they waited way too long to try to get into the market, just like they did with smartphones. In the mobile market, they took way too long to get into that market that was already being dominated by Apple and Android. And so, again, this was a time where Microsoft was playing catch up in the industry. And a lot of the products that came out around that time never made it into a success. What do you think about the Zune? Were you ever a user of the Zune? Do you have a Zune right now? Hopefully you were able to find this video useful and able to get that software and get the Zune working on your computer again. If you have any questions or any comments, let me know in the comment section. That is it for me. Go ahead and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. Go ahead and hit that bell so you can be alerted every time we have new videos. Thank you very much for watching.